Yeah, October's been spooky, to say the least.
You heard it from Zay Jones. October has been spooky for the Jaguars. That's because they can't seem to find a way to win a game in October. The team started the year 2-1, with all three of those games being played in September. Since the calendar turned to October, the Jaguars have just struggled. After their loss on Sunday to the Colts, the team has now been 0-3 in the month of October, and that brings their record to 2-4 on the season. Not exactly where everyone thought they would be after that 2-1 start, but with such a young roster, hopefully they can learn a thing or two from these losses.
Losses will tell you a lot about yourself as a man and in adversity and the type of character that you have instilled. And I think we're at a good point in our season now as a new Jaguars team to decide, are we going to turn the table and be something new, or are we going to fall into old habits? And I truly believe that this is a special group that moving forward. I believe in this group to win football games.
Zay Jones is right. If this year's Jaguars team is going to show that it's different from some of those teams of the past that have struggled to close seasons, they'll have to play their best football late in the year, November, December. That's when really good NFL teams play their best football.
You know, you don't want to peak too soon. And I feel as though this team is on pace to do something special down the road. Coming up, we have an unbelievable opportunity this week against the Giants. A good football team. They run the ball well. Great challenge for our defense. We know who they have on defense as we get into them a little bit more. But November, December, when we start clicking at that moment and we gain that momentum, I think that's what makes a dangerous team. And hopefully we can put ourselves in that category moving forward.
If the Jaguars are going to play their best football late in the year, they're going to have to find a way to win some of these close football games that they've been losing to start the year. All four of the Jaguars' losses have been by just one single score. Now, the downside of that means that in those close games, the Jaguars are folding instead of seeing a player step up to make the plays in crunch time. That was Doug Peterson's message to the team today, that he needs to see someone step up when the team needs them.
You know, we need somebody to make a play, you know, and that was kind of my message to the team this morning. And we just got to be able to do that a little bit better.
You know, we kind of all get that, I got to make a play. But, you know, the maturity part of it is do my job to make the play. Like, I'm going to do my job first, and then when that ball ends up in my gap, then I can make a play on that ball.
We'll talk more about who that player that could step up for the Jaguars late in games could be coming up when Teal the Show returns. I'll be joined by 1010XL's Frank Frangie. We'll break down a little bit more what went wrong on Sunday and how the Jaguars can get it fixed before this week's game against the New York Giants. That's straight ahead when Teal the Show returns. Welcome back into Teal the Show. I'm now joined by 1010XL's Frank Frangie. Frank, thanks for joining us tonight. Look, I'm blaming the Jaguars' struggles on the month of October. That's my story. I'm sticking to it.
Let's get out of October. My birthday's in October, Jamal, so I'm going to take some of that blame. Okay, so you blame October, and I'm an October baby, so I'll take it.
All right, Frank. The Jaguars are now 0-3 since the calendar turned. They've found different ways to lose each one of these games, but the common denominator is that they've had the lead in each one. I know that we always talk about young teams needing to learn how to win games, but when you have the lead, you were there. It was there for you, and then you find a way to lose the game. Do we feel like at this point maybe the Jaguars are finding a way to lose these games rather than just needing to find a way to win?
Well, I think one thing, the whole learning how to win thing, people talk about how teams have to learn how to win. Well, the best way to learn how to win is to experience winning. You have to win a few times, and you have to know how it felt, and you have to develop a little bit of that confidence, Jamal, and that swagger that you know how to win because you just did it. I think that's part of it. The great Bobby Bowden, now this was a college axiom, not a pro one, but the great Bobby Bowden always used to say, to build a program, here's how you do it. Lose big, lose small, win big. And that made a lot of sense. Again, that's college football. But the Jags are done losing big, I think. Nobody blows them out anymore, but they keep losing small. The next step is winning small, we hope. I don't think they're that far off. That one hurt the other day because you're right. Everybody talked about Trevor finding a way to lead a fourth quarter comeback. Well, he did. He led a fourth quarter comeback and gave them the lead, and they couldn't hold it. So it was bizarre how many struggles they had defensively. I don't think anybody saw that coming.
All right, let's talk about those defensive struggles, Frank. One of the guys that had a really struggle on the field was Shaquille Griffin. Gave up over 100 yards and, of course, gave up that go-ahead touchdown to the Colts late in the game. I know Shaq's a high-priced free agent addition to this team. Do you think he can bounce back? I like Shaq. I think he's the best option on the roster right now, but obviously Sunday wasn't what they need from him.
Jamal, I think Shaq's a good player. I don't think there's any question. I don't know if he's a great player, but he's a good player. What happened in that ballgame is they couldn't get home with 4, so they had to start blitzing. When you start blitzing, that means a lot of man coverage, as you know, and the Colts attacked that with a lot of crossing routes. All those crossers, I thought, really affected Shaq. He might be a guy that's better off as a zone corner when he can sit back and kind of watch the quarterback. That might be more his thing. I think he's a good player. I think he will bounce back. He's a stand-up guy. You heard him after the game. He owned it. He said, "This is on me. I played very poorly." I think he'll play better. I think he's a good player. I think he's a tough physical player. I don't know if he's a great player. I don't know if he's a great man-to-man coverage guy. We'll see if he's that or not. I think Tyson Campbell may be better of the two at that. But I think he's a good player, maybe not a great player. I do think he'll bounce back because he wants this in the worst way. Remember, he had his hands on all those interceptions, didn't make them last year, so spent so much time really working on that. I think Shaq will bounce back. I do.
I'm right there with you. I do think he'll bounce back. Obviously, again, not the outing that the guy wanted, but he's a player that they brought in for some of the off-the-field things that he brings to the team just as much as what he brings on the field. So I think that's just as important when you talk about a guy like that. Look, it's tough to put too much stock into this one game, even though the defense was the letdown, because they've been so consistently good to start the year, and this was kind of the fluke game where they kind of gave it up. I mean, there was the end of that Commanders game, but they played consistently up until this week, really.
Yeah, I think the defense will be okay. Jamal, it's a little bit like a basketball game when you got to cover the guy that can't miss, and you just catch him on a night where he can't miss. And I thought that was a little bit of it. Matt Ryan was really good. He was really good in this game. But I think they have to mix some things up. I'm a little concerned about the pass rush. Trayvon Walker's still learning how to play. He just got to the league. Josh Allen's a very good pass rusher. I don't know that there's a lot of other guys like that. So that concerns me a little bit. I think they've got good, tough, fast players. They did shut this team out not that long ago. They did hold the Chargers, a very good team, to 10 points. They have played they started out very well against the Eagles, who are the best team in the league, and then faded a little bit late second quarter. So it's clearly a team that's proven they can do it. I like their pieces. I think they need Foley Fatukasi back. I think he's so big and physical. He demands some double teams. He's the most physical defensive lineman they've got, and they're not as good a team without him. We said this all along, Jamal. They've got a good front 11, 12, 14 guys on defense if you count nickel and sub rushers, but they're not a deep team. And when they get some guys beat up, it's going to be tough. They'll bounce back from this. I don't know how many games they're going to win, but they're not going to have someone go up and down the field on them like the Colts did very often. I really believe that.
All right, Frank, on the flip side of that, the offense, looks like they turned a corner in that rushing attack. I mean, they were able to dominate the action on the ground. A big part of that, Travis Etienne. Do you think the light's starting to come on for him? Because every time it feels like he's touched the ball the past 2 weeks, he's like one guy away from going that long run.
I do think that. I think he's an explosive guy, Jamal. I really think Travis can go. Now, the question is, he's about 205 pounds, maybe 209 pounds. I don't know how many carries he can handle. I don't know that I want to see him carry it 22 times a game. A lot of fans say, why don't you give it to him more? Well, it's a long season. It's his first season in the NFL. He was hurt all last year, which would have been his rookie year. So you've got to be careful how much you give it to a guy like that hasn't played a lot. You need him for the whole year, but I think he is explosive. But know this, they use 3 running backs. They used James Robinson. They used Travis Etienne. They used DeMichael Hasty, and they all had good moments. That means there's good blocking, and it means there's good play calling. I thought Doug Peterson does a great job of designing blocking schemes on running plays and protections on passing plays that gives you an opportunity. The JaMychal Hasty play, you and I could have run through that hole, Jamal. I mean, it was that big, and I think that's play calling and blocking. But, yeah, I think they'll run the ball better. Look, they're going to be okay on offense. This is a young team. The parts are all there. It's frustrating to see loss after loss. It's 3 in a row, but it's clear the parts are all there. No one's rolling these guys. They're in every game. I think the wins are going to start happening.
All right, maybe they can start happening this week. Just maybe. They have the New York Giants. Vegas likes the Jaguars. The Jaguars have opened as the favorite by 2.5 points. I'm not sure what Vegas knows that we don't, because the Giants have only lost 1 game to this season. Now, Frank, here's the one thing that I think as we go into this matchup is the Jaguars and the Giants have some similarities. Both have a young quarterback, a new head coach, but the difference is that the Giants have been able to win those close games while the Jaguars have lost all of them.
Yeah, there are some similarities. There's no question. And Brian Daboll and Doug Peterson are both offensive-minded coaches, very good play callers, and very good developers of quarterbacks. I agree with you. Daniel Jones has been around a little bit. I think that's one thing. The other part of it, too, is they're probably a little more built. As good as the Jaguars are at running back, they don't have Saquon Barkley. He's as good as any running back in the league. I think those two things are separators. But here's why the Jags are favorite. Jamal, this is an NFL formula game. You've seen the NFL enough times. 5-1 team comes in playing great. 2-3 team is reeling a little bit. 2-3 teams at home. Then the 2-3 team wins. That's the way the NFL goes. How in the world do the Steelers, who aren't very good, beat the Buccaneers, who are pretty good? Because the NFL formula does that. So I'm not surprised. I think the Jags are going to beat the Giants. We'll talk more about this, obviously, on Teal the show on Friday when we pick the game. But I think this sets up well for Jacksonville. I do.
You know what, Frank? I hope you're right. I'll take the NFL formula because that would get the Jaguars back on the right track. It doesn't matter how they get the W as long as they get the W. Frank, thanks for joining us tonight. That'll do it for Teal the Show. Thank you at home for joining us. Good night and go Jags.